PHASTR application process. And at the end, we will have a sort of a panel Q&A. Folks who have questions along the way, please do feel free to use the Q&A feature of Zoom, and we will be able to answer those potentially as we go along, but also sort of at the end. And with that, I will hand it over to Ken.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. Next slide, please. So actually, yeah, so let me to kind of set the stage. First of all, thank everybody for coming. So I believe everybody is familiar with the N3C, but I realize that may not completely be true. So just 2 seconds of that. The N3C was set up as a very large COVID enclave across a large group of organizations, CTRs, community hospital, FQHCs, CTSAs. We have 76 institutions, 20 billion rows of data, COVID and COVID controls within this repository. And we, the federal government, have been asked many times to answer public health questions. The one I always use is in the early summer, late spring, the White House approached NCATS and said, we need to decide whether we're going to order this medicine called Paxlovid we've been hearing about. But now there are reports of something called rebound, and we got to order it now. But if it's not safe, we don't want to do that. And the only study they had was about 300 folks. And so the team within NCATS N3C community, led by Emily and Richard Moffat, but many others, within a week, 2 weeks, were able to get the White House not a definitive answer on the ultimate impact of COVID, but the question they were asking, which was, is it safe? And if we order it, is it going to hurt people? We were able to answer pretty easily, or easily for me, because I didn't do the work. And that was incredibly helpful for the White House, because they have to make these decisions many months ahead of time. So the problem is that ultimately we can't ask people to answer these questions if we get a lot of them without a mechanism to do it. And so PHASTR really was, that's the background of PHASTR. So as you read this text, and I'm not big on putting text in slides, but I did do this, really the goal is to answer these questions that come about quickly and to come up with a mechanism that we can create quickly. So if we were to do like an FOA, it would take months. So that's what this is, and it's an unusual use of a contract mechanism that we hope will get people paid for what they do, but get the federal government or other agencies who need to know public health information what they need. So next slide. So over time, when NCATS gets a request like the White House request, there's some vetting that goes in with what questions appropriate for N3C to answer, because N3C can't answer all questions. But once a question is decided, then it will be posted on the website, the N3C website, and that's what you're seeing right now. And we don't really know how many questions we're going to get. We started with 2 questions, but we know we'll have these will be rolling out over time. And if you click on these questions, you'll see all the details of the questions and what you need to know, and what we're looking for. I think a really important point here is that this is a contract, and we're going to talk about this a lot, because unlike a research study where we're saying, hey, what do you think about a subject, and we want you to be creative and explore, this is more of a contract in that somebody's asking a specific question. So we're asking for a deliverable. And that is what you'll see on the website. So next slide. So this is what I was saying that you'll be able to find. We've tried to come up with a general I'll loosely use the term protocol that includes the contract description. Think of more of what we want in the work, the title of it, what we're trying to do, what the aim is, inclusion, exclusion, if appropriate, phenotype, etc. So you as what we use the term offer as opposed to an investigator, know what we want to get, what somebody in the federal government, someone somewhere is funding. And then and that's the body of it, but there's also just application information. This is kind of the nuts and bolts when the application is open for submissions, when it's closed, how many contracts are going to be given. So you could imagine that using the Paxlovid example, we may want to fund 2 or 3 groups that are doing this because they may come up with different methods or looking at different things. So it'll say number of contracts. In this case, in this example, we just put 1, how much money you're going to get, how much time you have to do this work. This is important in that these are faster on purpose. These people who are asking this need this information. We totally understand that 2 months is unreasonable from the beginning to the end. So when we're talking 2 months, we're saying once all the contracting work we're going to talk about in a second, all the proposals, everything's been approved. Once you've been given what we would refer to as the workspace, this is the time you have to do the work. So 2 months is really once everything is a go, just to be clear. And then every PHASTR also has a contact information, which right now we set up a general mailbox, and so it'll always be the same. Next slide. Okay, so this is just for folks who aren't familiar with N3C, I just put in this very high-level slide. If you have never been registered at N3C, if your institution does not have a data use agreement, then you're a first-time user, and those things have to be done. N3C has a wonderful website on all the details of it, and so I won't go into it because you can find it on the website. But in essence, you have to submit a proposal, you have to meet some criteria. For the people who are returning members, you've kind of already done all the first part, but so you're really just starting at the proposal, the ability to submit a proposal, and there is a PHASTR proposal. It's similar to the DUR in process, but it's not the DUR because the questions are different. But like the DUR, it will be reviewed. It will be first reviewed by at NCATS, we have sorry to step back, a contractor. I'm going to refer periodically to this group as Axel, and they will do the first cut review. So let's say we have 30 people apply to do Paxlovid, that those will be looked at by that committee, and then the ones that meet recommended will be looked at by an internal NCATS DAC, we'll call it the PHASTR DAC. And then that's how the decision will be made. Next slide. Okay, so this is kind of the nitty gritty on it. On the homepage for people interested in being an offer, there's a brand new button, and you see it on a screenshot. It's actually been centered now, but I put a red square around it, or a rectangle around it. It doesn't have a red rectangle in reality. I was just doing that to point it out. So you click on that button. Next slide. And there you go. You answer these 4 questions. And these, I put on the slide what NCATS is looking for to be put in these 4 text boxes. You will also, just FYI, when you apply, there's a list. There could be many PHASTR studies, or it's not studies, PHASTR contracts being offered. So the blue is the one I, as a user, clicked on. So make sure you will have to click on one. So make sure that you're with whichever one you're clicking on is the one you want to apply for. But these are general categories of what we want it to be put in. Now, all this information is on the N3C website, so you don't need to rush to copy it down. And of course, the slides will be made available for you, but it's all available there. Next slide. And so let's say So you've submitted your approval, you submitted your offer, your submission, and then the PHASTR team reviewed it, both the contractor and NCATS. But then what happens? And that's what the rest of this talk is going to be about, because there's still two big steps that need to be done. And that is, you have been selected to do this, but you have to contract so you can get the money to do this. So a contract obviously is not a grant. And so the Axle team will work with you, and we will initially send out an email to you to work with your institution to set up a contract. In addition, you as a person who is getting ready to do this work have to go and get your IRB determination on doing this work. So this is going to be the unfortunately delayed step. So during the time that you're contracting, getting your contract, that is the time to submit to put in your IRB application to your local institution, so you can get that IRB approval. And then when you get it, I'll show you a screening next, you upload it into the N3C, just like you do now. It's actually the exact same screen, even same questions for code of conduct, same questions for, data protection, but it's a little asynchronous like it was before, because it wouldn't have made sense that all 30 people had to get an IRB. It makes more sense that only the folks who've been selected. So next slide. So I just wanted to show a screen of it. So once you get your IRB, you'll come back into the application. You'll be able to click a button that says complete the application, and you will see this set of questions, which for the folks who've done DURs are very familiar. It's no different. At the bottom, you see the upload of a PDF file of your letter of determination. Next slide. So, and then you're going to get a congratulations, everything's done. And we will provision the workspace. And that's when you really can get going to do your work. Next slide. I think this is my last slide. Yes. I just want to, the only thing I wanted to say, and I know Sean and others will say, but there's a lot of support for folks on using this. You're not being thrown, into the ocean without a life raft. For the people who haven't worked in the Enclave, we can talk about support later, but don't feel like you're alone on having to use the Enclave. So I'll pass it off now. Is that Dave or?
No, I wasn't speaking. There was, okay, so
There are two questions. Did we answer the questions that are in the Q&A, or do we want to wait until at the end?
I'll answer. The question was, I thought there was no IRB needed due to it being a contract, and that was so we've never done this. Is a new mechanism, and last week we did change directions on this. So I apologize, because probably that misinformation came from me. So that has changed. So yes, it is. Is there any word limit on each section? There isn't a word limit, but we also don't want you to feel like you have to write, a book. The DURs are about a page, and hopefully, don't feel like you have to, you're not responsible for a novel. It's faster for you and for us.
Right. So Ken, I'll just add a couple of points to that. We've begun to receive proposals, and the information that we have requested when folks fill out the DUR-like form initially, or the proposal form, is very helpful. And it's on the order of about 2 pages altogether, 1 to 2 pages. And I agree with you, it doesn't need to be War and Peace, but we are looking for some detailed methodology. And the last thing I'll mention here is we're not formally presenting today. Obviously, on behalf of Axel, we're available to talk about general questions regarding contracts, but I am the technical overseer. So I'm part of the panel that is assessing the merit of the various proposals and making suggestions to NCATS about funding. We do have a draft scope of work that's put together, and this does include a midterm project status update, no later than about 5 weeks after the contract is executed. Basically a report consisting of a summary of the prior activities, including progress achieved toward performance of the analyses, problem areas, if any, and remediation plans. There will be weekly or twice monthly meetings as needed with the Axel technical support person. That would be myself. I'll be assisted by a project coordinator as well. And then ultimately, as far as the analyses and results are concerned, we are looking for documentation with explanatory content regarding the approach, and if machine learning is used, and it's not this time, the machine learning pipeline. The results will need to be available for review by the Axel technical person, myself, and I'll be working with Hytham, in a report form in the N3C Enclave within 60 calendar days after the commencement of work. And then we're also looking at the end for code that's suitable for export to GitHub. And there are a few other things that are outlined in the draft scope of work, but I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the group. Hopefully, Ken, that was useful.
Thank you. Sean, who's up next?
If that's all that there is around the contract information, then I can jump into the section that discusses sort of accessing the Enclave and filling out the application, but I want to make sure that there's room for Tim and others to jump in if necessary.
Yes,
I think.
yeah,
Can I say one thing first, Tim? Sorry, and Sean, and this is Sam Michael, the CIO of NCATS, because I just want to answer a couple of questions here. There's no because Racine, it looks like you can submit as many proposals, as you want. Potentially, there's no limitation there. It looks like Ken is typing an answer to that, but there's not necessarily a limitation on the number of proposals. For the anonymous attendee asking the question, how would the contract work with team members at multiple institutions? Realistically, you guys would have to pick potentially, there's a couple routes that could go. You would have to pick a lead institution that would essentially be the offerer. And then you guys can work it out that way. That would be a discussion to have with Axel, potentially, of what would make the most sense. But there's a couple routes that it could go. So what I would propose, though, what make the most sense there is just have a lead institution that would potentially act as the subcontractor. But that would be a question to ask Axel, because again, sometimes it's tricky between the different business offices. For the attendee about the money used for a conference trip, there's no travel associated with this. And again, I mean, that's actually, it's an interesting question, but I think that the purpose of this is to perform, to help answer a specific question utilizing the platform. I'm not sure how a conference trip would be applicable, but we can definitely say we did not include travel costs in this contract. So very unlikely that it would be acceptable. But it'd be interesting for the anonymous attendee asking that question. If you want to send us, I'd be curious how you could see that assisting and helping answering the question. And again, I just want to say contractually, it's not something we considered, the need for travel, but I'd be interested if you're comfortable sharing, there's the email I think you guys can share where you can submit questions to of how that could potentially be utilized. And I hope that answered most folks' questions. The final one about, will the award be given to the institution, the individual who is working on the project? This is a great question because, again, it depends. There's a lot of variables to this. There's nothing stopping potentially an individual from self-incorporating as an LLC and submitting a proposal, it doesn't necessarily have to be an institution. There's a lot of different ways that we could go about this. Then we'd have to do the consideration and Ken about, the IRB, approval in that regards. But I think, that depends upon the institution or the individual submitting and how they're submitting this. Because again, given that this is a contract, it's essentially someone who is in a position to establish a contractual relationship with the government's contractor, Axle, could potentially be eligible. But again, it depends upon the specific use case or the specific instance of where someone submits that as an offer. There's technically nothing preventing someone as an individual, again, who's self-incorporated from submitting a proposal. What NCATS is looking for here is who is deemed to have the greatest chance of success to help answer some of these questions. And I think the timing of this is fantastic because we're coming around flu season, there's already talks about potential spikes, who knows what questions we need to ask. But so again, this is like Ken had mentioned, this is a new mechanism. There's a lot of flexibility to this. And so I think there are going to be some that we're learning on the fly.
Right. It is new, Sam, and thank you so much for your comments. Right. As far as the individual submitting, that had been my understanding as well. Ken and I talked about that yesterday. Of course, this is level 3 data, so an IRB determination letter is required. And perhaps the most expedient way to go about this would be for someone who has a grand idea as an individual to collaborate actively with members of an institution that does have an institutional IRB. Because ultimately we are going to be looking for that sheepskin before the DAC grants access to the Enclave. Ken and I talked about this yesterday. Ken, if I got any of that wrong, please correct me, but please weigh in.
No, that's exactly right. And I just put in the chat also, on the N3C website, we talk about level 3, and there are some limitations there. The IRB, people who can't, obviously have to have a data use agreement. Check out those requirements. And there may be some folks it would be very difficult as an individual to do. So like Dave said, I think partnering with an institution of some type, it could be IBM. It doesn't have to be an academic institution, but I think that would probably be more expedient and easier.
Right. Right. And then from a contractual standpoint, I'm hoping that we have Tim and Reed from Axle here. If there are any questions that folks have about contracts, we didn't have a formal presentation on the contractual process. And I think the request was that any questions be reduced to writing and then shared with Axle so that we can evaluate and respond appropriately. But if there are any general questions that folks have about contracts, we have Tim and Reed here as well. I'm not part of the contracts office there. I'm more on the technical side. But my understanding, again, is if you have a folks from various institutions who want to pool their brain power, then you would need to pick apparently a lead institution that takes the reins and submits on behalf of the group. That would be my understanding. Anyway, so over to you. I think that is the next section, you, Sean?
Yeah, I was gonna just sort of briefly review sort of our Enclave access and onboarding procedures and step through the application process as it exists in the Enclave right now. Before I do that, I am kind of curious, we've advertised this pretty widely. By show of virtual raised hands, briefly, how many folks already have access to the Enclave and have onboarded with N3C?
I see 14, 16. It's growing.
Mm-hmm. So it looks like maybe about a third of folks here. All right, excellent. So mostly what I'll be discussing will be relevant for those who don't already have access to the Enclave. Let me share my screen and skip down to my section. So All work in N3C, including for the PHASTR initiative, happens within N3C's what we call our data enclave. Data checks in, it doesn't check out, as Ken likes to say. And the first step in all of this is onboarding with N3C and getting access to this enclave. This is also where the application process happens. So you need to go through these steps to onboard in order to apply. To do so, there are several steps, and I'm going to kind of skim over them right now. You need to be covered by a data use agreement. This is something that institutions sign with NIH and is a legal agreement that sort of provides access to be able to just log into the enclave for everyone at that institution. So we do have experience helping people work with their institutions to get a DUA signed. One minor thing, you'll need an ORCID ID. This is a quick thing to sign up for, but we request it during onboarding and registration. So go there and get yourself a researcher ORCID ID if you don't already have one. When you do apply, you're going to need to have completed your human subjects research protection training. This is often offered via the city program, though if your institution doesn't have a city program set up already, then it is possible to take an NIH-sponsored one, though you want to make sure to check with your local institution about what satisfies this particular requirement. There's a short NIH IT security training that's involved with onboarding as well. And then finally, there's sort of the registration step, which just happens at this labs.cd2h.org/registration. So there are a number of things here, and I've sort of skimmed over the details, but fortunately, there's a good amount of information at this link here, covid.cd2h.org/for-researchers. And this covers some of the information that is required just for onboarding and getting access to the enclave. Once you do get access to the enclave, as Ken mentioned, the application can be found under this public health proposals. These are recent screenshots here. Button from the enclave homepage. And when you open that up, you will see the interface that looks more or less like this. The various questions are listed over here on the left. And each question displays two tabs. The first tab is the overview, which provides information, all of which is duplicated on the public website. So you don't need to access the enclave to get this basic information. This is available on the public website. And if you go to the new public health application, this is a modified version of what we in N3C know as the DUR, or data use request form. This is a modified version of it. So those who are already familiar with N3C will see some things that are familiar and some things that aren't. The first section here sort of recapitulates the contract aims and the inclusion and exclusion criteria and those things that were mentioned that are listed along with each question on the public website. Further down, other information. Each DUR normally has a title. In this particular section, it is set for you. So your title of your project is going to be your name as the offer applying and the question title. And then there are those four questions that Ken had mentioned, and below them is details about what should go in them. So the project summary, the strategy for identifying the cohort of study, including key criteria for inclusion, anticipated sample size, and controls if they're used, the manner in which they'll be identified, and referring to other sections as appropriate. You'll also have a chance to enter your analytical approach, including endpoints and statistical methodology, key variables you'll use, and if you're using machine learning plans, how you intend to implement those, and potential anticipated sources bias of confounding, and if you're going to anticipate any missing data, you should mention how you plan to deal with those. And then finally, a justification of how you think this is going to answer the question. And these are the primary four fields that will be reviewed by the reviewers to determine who gets the contract. Down below, you'll have the opportunity to invite collaborators to your project if you are successful and a project workspace is created for you. You can do so by entering their first name and last name and their email. And essentially if you do so, and you can add multiples of those individuals will get an email inviting them to come and onboard with N3C and pointing them at that For Researchers page that sort of shows them how to do that. If you plan to include collaborators, you don't have to know them all right away. It is possible once the application is submitted and or after it's accepted, I don't know exactly which one, to for collaborators to join your project after the fact via another dashboard that we have in the Enclave where they can find the project and then request to join. And so if you're not entirely sure who your collaborators will be right away, don't worry about it, because those collaborators will be able to onboard and request access to the project as well. Further down, in N3C, we have multiple tiers of data depending on the kinds of projects that people are working on. For this PHASTR initiative, I believe all the projects are going to be accessing the level 3, which is the most detailed version of the data that we have. And this does have, for the most part, full 5-digit patient zip codes and accurate dates of service, though there are some caveats on that, and it's worth hovering over the little I button there. For example, certain zip codes that have fewer than 20,000 people won't have the full 5-digit patient zip codes. And some of the data partners that are providing data to N3C do a little bit of shifting of dates, even in their level 3 submission. And in this case, we can see that there's also an extra set of mortality information that is included via N3C's PPRL program, which you can also find more about on our N3C website. So down below, there's a copy of the data use agreement, which you are covered by if you are accessing the Enclave via your institution, but you will also need to read and attest that you have understood it here. You'll have to attest that you've completed that NIH security and IT management training that I mentioned earlier here. And as well, you're going to have to attest that you've completed your human subjects research protection training. And it'll have to be within the previous 3 years. And if you click yes here, it will ask you when the date of when you completed that is. Next, as part of the application project, application process, there's an N3C user code of conduct, which covers a variety of things, including appropriate uses of the data, but also our principles of inclusivity and so on. So you can attest that you've read that. We do have, in order to get results out of the Enclave, whether for this PHASTR initiative or in any case, we have a process by which results are submitted for review to ensure that there's no patient identifiable information that can leave the Enclave. This is also the process by which people who complete work and do the deliverables for PHASTR will submit those results to the committee. So you'll need to understand that, and there's a link there under the information. And again, there's more information on our public website. And we do have a number of other data sets available in N3C, including public data sets like FDA data sets and US Census data sets that you can use alongside your analysis. Some institutions have certain requirements around linking the kinds of data that we have here with those kinds of data. And we just request that people acknowledge that they're aware of whatever those institutional acknowledgements or institutional requirements are. And then once you've done all that, you'll be able to submit the application. And then I believe once approved in a later step, you'll have a chance to submit your IRB letter of determination along with the contract process. So once you're submitted, and especially once you're submitted, and if you are successful, there's a variety of information inside of N3C, inside of the Enclave and outside that can really help you out. As mentioned, we have a public page here that describes PHASTR. We have a variety of support and training materials, and these are summarized at covid.cd2h.org/training. Many of those exist inside of the Enclave, and you can access them under the training material button that's at the top of the Enclave homepage. We do run Tuesdays and Thursday office hours, and you can find the link to those at covid.cd2h.org/support. And finally, we have a couple of ways to submit questions. If you don't already have Enclave access, you can submit questions at an external to the Enclave ticket system that lives on our public website. And once you're working and you're doing things inside the Enclave, there is also a ticket system inside the Enclave for more technical questions or issues with running your code or doing your analyses. Regarding the project proposals, you can see information about your projects here. You can sort of click on the My Projects to see your submitted application. And then for collaborators, if you didn't initially invite them via that invitation when you were submitting the form, you can send them to the Explore Projects dashboard within the Enclave, and they'll be able to find your project in the list. And there's a request to join button there, and then they'll be able to request to join, and you'll be able to approve them, and then their access will be approved by the data access committee. So that's the route for people to join after the project has been approved, if they weren't initially invited. And that's all I had right there. And I think we can do further questions if people have them.
We're as we're waiting for more questions to come into the Q&A, one of the things that for folks who aren't familiar with N3C, it is an open science community. So as there are more PHASTR work, what we call knowledge objects, those things that are defined within, are shared with amongst each other. So any assets that are built, I just want folks to understand that we consider this part of the Enclave, and those are shared with everybody so they can use them. So we don't want people duplicating work. So, and it's part of the our principles for this type of thing. We've gotten a couple of questions on how many contracts will be awarded. Each question that goes out to PHASTR, and we don't know how many questions will be posted, because you never know what's going to come up with the disorder, but we'll have the number of contracts. So each question will have a value of how many will be awarded. The first two we put out, only one is being offered, but in the future there may be 2 contracts per question, for a question, or 4, or whatever. So it's each question you'll see how many being awarded.
I will mention, since we don't have any open questions, and we had a number of folks who are not already onboarded with N3C, there is quite a bit to know about the N3C tooling and processes and all the resources that we have available. The application process lives within the Enclave. I would recommend that if you are interested in this program, that you go ahead and onboard and check out our training materials, stop by our office hours. We do have example notional data that you can use to get familiar with the platform and the tooling that we have available. So yeah, definitely get in there and poke around the platform, and that way you'll be ready to do the analysis should you be successful in your application as soon as you hit the ground running.
Sean,
I missed that, Anita. Can you repeat it?
Each of the questions are very different. I'm sorry. Anonymous says, can we apply one of the questions or 2 questions together? If I'm understanding what you're asking, they're very different. So your proposals would be different. So you would need to apply to both, to both, if you want to do both, to both of them. Oh, yes, absolutely. The one of the main reasons that I'm sorry, Anonymous asked, can the results from the contract be written by the awarded individual for a manuscript to view? Absolutely, absolutely. We would love that. And that is actually one of the reasons we changed the IRB requirement, because we wanted to make sure that if you decide to publish, your institution's aware of it. So yes, we would love it and encourage it. For us, this is important. Somebody's asked this question, and the results of that question will be on our public website. We call it the public health dashboard, and that's where questions are answered. So, how many people had rebound to Paxlovid would be a perfect example. That'll be out there. So that the requirement for us is that we can get the information out to whomever needed it. The requirement for you, there's no limit, and we would love for you to publish. Anita or Sean, regarding notifications of new questions, we do post these on the N3C website, and we have a letter, an Ansible that we post an N3C newsletter, as well as a CTSA wide letter called the Ansible that we can put it in, but we don't have a listserv. Sean or Anita, I don't want to misstate that one.
I'm not sure either. Are you aware?
I can send it out every time there's a new question. I can do an email blast. And I can promote it on Slack and through social media as well.
But we could additionally, am I still okay? If folks would like to see a dedicated listserv, go ahead and raise your hand and virtually, and we'll do another quick straw poll. I don't see a reason why we couldn't make that happen.
Do you need, Anonymous says, do you need code data delivery in addition to the report? This is I don't, let's see if I'm answering your question on this one. The work is done in the Enclave. So that's what I was saying. It's your work is in your workspace, but it is part of the Enclave, and part of the mid contract review will be looking at your results and what you've done. So you're again, we're looking for a set of results so we can give it to who's ever funded this, but your code will be available in the Enclave for review. And Dave, is that a fair answer to that question?
Right. I mean, by 10, as we've discussed before, and the scope of work that I alluded to is a draft scope of work that was put together and vetted with NCATS. And obviously that's something that we would, that Axel would work out on a case-by-case basis with the sites, but this has been vetted by NCATS, and NCATS was looking for code suitable for export to GitHub by 10 weeks after the execution of the subcontract. And the documentation that was requested here for the report, and again, this was vetted with NCATS, requested documentation should include explanatory content regarding the approach. There are ways to put reports together in the Enclave, and there would be support to help you with that, because the N3C community does have, as Sean mentioned, a vibrant support initiative.
There was a question from Amber about who can, are there people who are excluded? And really, this was an optics thing. The N3C team felt that it wouldn't be fair or look good if they, as PIs of the N3C, were also applying for these fundings. And so other than that team, there's really not an exclusion. It was really, we just didn't want to, not be perceived as not being fair or anything like that, or have giving some people unfair advantage. So, but generally speaking, there is no limits. I hope that answers your question. think, are there any other questions?
I think we can wrap up. I want to thank everyone for the outstanding questions. There's the email that you guys can send additional questions to. We're really excited to see these submissions. It sounds like, David, you're already getting some. And we really hope, if this is a success, that, you know, we utilize mechanisms like this in the future, you know, because again, we really want to make sure, I know it seems strange to folks, but, you know, the government actually is interested in paying people to do work. So, you know, and why it's a strange concept. So, you know, we do this contractually all the time. So really thank everyone for their time today, all the panelists, and yeah, let's wait for these submissions and let's start answering some of these critical questions.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you guys being available to answer questions, and for An and Sean for putting this webinar together for us. And we'll post this and send this out to those who signed up for the webinar, and we'll post it so people can actually look at it later on if they weren't able to attend.
Thank you.
Thank you.